All right, we have more changes unfolding in the sphere of geopolitics. Changes that have the US and NATO continuing to fumble and bumble us into war. This after Vladimir Putin last week unveiled a peace agreement to stop the war in Ukraine and move forward. An agreement that Joe Biden and his NATO counterparts decided to laugh at and dismiss out of hand. Well, Putin's seemingly had enough. And Russia this week began preparations for what appears to be full-blown war. Not hyperbole. This has been building for over a year. He's given countless warnings and red lines, each of them we ignore. Well, over the last 9 months, Putin's been working on building an alliance of his own. He just finished meeting with North Korea and Vietnam last week, the two last countries he needed, and the culmination of all his work over the last 9 months. Putin's come out twice this week with these ominous warnings. I'm going to show you this because you need to see it. And something else, why is the White House, why is Biden, the U.S. government, doing all of this? It's just odd to say the least. And keep in mind, we're only 5 months out from the November election. But before we get started, thank you for liking and sharing these videos. It really helps out the channel. And consider subscribing so you don't miss these regular updates. So in May of 1999, during the Clinton administration, the US and NATO started the first war in Europe since World War II ended. It started with the US bombing Belgrade repeatedly for 78 days. The idea was to break Serbia in the goal of creating Kosovo into what it is today, which, by the way, today happens to house the largest NATO base in the Balkans. That was the goal, to overthrow a government, to encroach on Russia's doorstep, get closer, to strategically surround them, weakening Russia. This plan, it's been in motion for decades, folks. Overthrowing governments seems to be what we do. Most of the time we do it poorly. Every single U.S. administration has some kind of iteration of this. After Clinton split Serbia, George Bush did it in Iraq. We all know what happened there. Obama did it multiple times with Hillary Clinton as Secretary of State, trying to overthrow Bashar al-Assad in Syria, but failing. Then successfully carrying out a coup in Libya, removing Muammar Gaddafi. That was awful, by the way. If you've never seen what happened to Gaddafi in the end, don't Google it. And in 2014, they did it again in the Ukraine. That decision in 2014 under Obama, acting with impunity, messing with other countries' democracies, has led to where we are now, where Russia and Ukraine are in a full-blown hot war. Hundreds of thousands killed, hundreds of billions in U.S. taxpayer money wasted. Well, it could be about to get much, much worse, folks. In the last week, a number of escalatory steps have been taken, and it all started with Joe Biden green-lighting the use of U.S. weapons to strike deep inside Russia. Then last week, after he did that, because he did that 3 weeks ago, then last week there's been like this cascade, like this domino effect happen. Him doing that appears to have kicked this next phase off. Watch this clip, and after, I'm going to show you what's happened since. Watch this.
Major turn on Ukraine, a major reversal from the White House tonight. The Biden administration giving Ukraine permission now to strike inside parts of Russia with American-made weapons for the first time. Here's Martha Raddatz.
Tonight, with the Russian assault on Ukraine's second largest city, Kharkiv, intensifying, the Biden administration has made a major reversal, allowing U.S.-supplied weapons to be fired inside Russia. For years, the administration balked at the idea, fearing a strike on Russia itself with U.S.-made weapons could draw the U.S. into direct conflict with Russia. More than a dozen other Western countries have also approved weapons being used inside Russia. But Vladimir Putin already with a threatening response, calling it an escalation, another step towards a serious conflict in Europe and around the globe.
Following that decision, which was only a few weeks ago, it's led to this cascade of escalation, culminating with a final warning that Putin just gave to the United States and to NATO on Thursday. I have the clip. I'm going to play it in a minute. So since then, what have we seen? Russia sending warships 60 miles off the coast of Florida to Cuba. If you didn't see that early last week, quote, American and Canadian warships tracked a Russian submarine as it traveled along the Florida coast. A Russian naval flotilla also docked in Havana, Cuba last week, raising concerns over the Kremlin's intentions in the Western Hemisphere amid heightened tensions. Then Putin's Asian tour, where he just met this week with North Korea's Kim Jong-un and Vietnam. This trip wasn't just routine. Dozens of agreements were just signed with these countries, defense pacts. He's putting together a coalition of countries just like we did with NATO years ago. Vladimir Putin, he said so himself in a statement following his meeting with Kim Jong-un, saying, quote, the partnership has a military component which affirms that each side will come to the aid of the other if it is under attack, unquote. Basically a NATO-like mutual defense agreement. He's doing the same reportedly with Vietnam. And after he said that, by the way, he mentioned the importance of it after learning that Joe Biden just signed off on U.S.-made F-16s that are to be flown out of Ukrainian territory, obviously to strike deep inside Russia. I mean, what is the Biden administration thinking? They didn't do this for almost 4 years because they knew what it would lead to. So why do it now? Could it be because we're only 5 months out from the U.S. election? Then on Thursday, Putin issued another warning that he's expanding his country's nuclear triad. The nuclear triad, it's the ability for a country to have nuclear-ready missiles to be able to launch from land, from sea, and from air. Only 3 other countries possess this ability: China, India, and Russia, and the U.S. Now, in these warnings that Putin made in his press conference Thursday, one of them was how Russia will be changing its nuclear deterrence policy. That's the no first use policy. That is like the last thing you want to see change, folks. And look, what we're seeing here is the forming of alliances. It's been our policy to keep Russia as isolated as possible for decades. Well, in the last 3 years, everything that we've done has helped them form these ironclad partners. So watch this warning from Putin on Thursday. Watch this.
Я думаю, что все возможно в современном мире, но я уже говорил, и это понятно для всех, что это будет в одном шаге от полномасштабной Третьей мировой войны. Думаю, что в этом вряд ли кто-нибудь заинтересован. Но очень бы хотелось, чтобы вот Франция играла не вот такую роль, которая ведет к усугублению конфликта, к его обострению, не провоцировала бы эту ситуацию, а наоборот, вот как здесь вот было сказано, я этого не слышал, но тем не менее речь идет и о возможных способах мирного урегулирования. В этом смысле, мне кажется, Франция могла бы сыграть свою роль. Не все еще потеряно.
Look, what we're seeing is Russia finally waking up. They're no longer on the defensive. They've been trying to make peace. NATO continues to just expand closer to their doorstep. And Joe Biden signing the North Atlantic Treaty 2 months ago in March, officially making Sweden NATO's newest member, also Finland as well, all with the goal of literally surrounding Russia with NATO-controlled forces. All of it's been a long-term strategic plan. Our State Department has been lying through their teeth for like decades when it comes to Russia, making agreements, promises to bring peace, have a cordial working relationship, something that Putin has wanted. It's all been for show, all to buy time. The goal was always this. And why? For what possible reason could the West be steamrolling us into a war with the largest nuclear superpower on the planet? What could be so damn important that all of that is worthwhile? I don't know. I assume it has to do with China. Russia shares a 2,600 plus mile border with China. Turn Russia into a Western proxy state, kind of like Ukraine is, and maybe China can be contained. They've gamed this out at the Pentagon over and over again. Without Russia, the U.S. loses a war with China every time. Hence why we are where we are today. Again, I don't know that to be the real reason behind all of this, why Russia is so damn important. I almost hope that's the reason. At least there'd be a logical purpose why they're doing all of this. The alternative would be even worse, that there's no plan at all, right? Well, at this point, Russia clearly knows the West has no intention of making peace. If they did, it would have happened a long time ago. So what we're seeing is Putin trying to catch up. He's been at a major disadvantage. He's been correcting that. It's why we've been seeing all the movement with BRICS. They've moved almost completely away from the US dollar. Almost all Russian and Chinese imports and exports now settled in either rubles or yuan. He's formed new alliances, new defense pacts with other countries that have an axe to grind with the West, like North Korea, China, Vietnam, Iran, Syria, Venezuela, Cuba, just to name a few. So all the poking the Biden administration and Europe have been doing, poking the Russian bear, well, it's been asleep, folks, for the last 20 years. But I'm afraid it's just woken up. All right, that wraps up the news portion of this video. Now I want to tell you about the sponsor for today, ATHA Energy, a uranium mining and exploration company. This is hands down the best uranium company in the world, in my opinion, from an investor's point of view. And let me tell you why. This company, ATHA Energy, why this is the one. This is the go-to uranium company, small cap with monumental upside potential. But before we look at what I find so special about this company, let me just provide some context. Uranium, it's in a full-blown bull market right now. And why is that? Number one, there was that bipartisan bill banning Russian imports of uranium. That's 15% of all inbound uranium to the U.S. gone. Just like that. And 20% of American households get their heat and their energy from where? From nuclear energy. 30% of the world's uranium consumption comes from the U.S. And now that Russia's off the table, the other countries that produce uranium, like what are we left with? Kazakhstan, Niger? Not exactly a safe or consistent long-term strategy for importing uranium, but we now have Canada. And that's the place, folks. That's the new go-to country for uranium. It's coming primarily from one place, the Athabasca Basin in Saskatchewan. Get it? Athabasca Basin, ATHA Energy. And guess what? ATHA Energy, they're the single largest landowner in the entire basin. They own the most land out of any other uranium company who's drilling there. So how in the world did this small, tiny, under-the-radar mining company gobble up 4.8 million acres in the basin? Realize the largest uranium miners in the world are fighting to stake land there right now. And ATHA Energy somehow has 4.8 million acres. Well, here's what happened. For 10 years following Fukushima, when uranium mining was frowned upon, Matthew and Timothy, the founders of ATHA Energy, staked the largest ever land package in the basin. They just kept buying. Everyone was telling them it's a terrible investment, don't do it. They didn't listen. They kept buying, and it paid off bigly. 4.8 million acres. I spoke about this company late last year. I've been watching them for like the last 12 months. Well, guess what? Since I made that video 2 months ago, $45 million of institutional money has come into ATHA. Institutional money from accredited investors. You don't get attention like that for no reason. Now, if you look at the market cap of ATHA, currently around 130 million US. They have $45 million in cash on their balance sheet. That means you're paying 90 mil for the largest ever land package in the world's best jurisdiction, 4.8 million acres. Is more land necessarily better? Well, not always, obviously. It depends on what's happening beneath the ground there, right? Well, last year, after I spoke about them, they did the largest ever electromagnetic survey of the basin. They put 7 choppers in the air to survey these 4.8 million acres. Now they have the proprietary data showing what's under the ground. That gives the geologists the info they need to decide where to drill. And what they're doing now with it is they're going into the prospect generator business. So instead of keeping the 4.8 million acres all to themselves, drilling's expensive. Even with 45 million cash, it's just too much land to drill yourself. So what are they doing instead? They're able to shop this data around to other mining companies and let all the other companies bid on specific areas of their land. And when they do this, when they vend pieces of their land off, they retain a portion of the findings. They're not just selling it off. If those mining companies who contract the land score big on it, ATHA retains a piece of the earnings. This way, the mining companies take all the risk, they spend the money, and if even one of them strikes it big, cha-ching. Here's how profitable this business model can be. They did this 10 years ago. Look at this map. All the light green's ATHA currently. The dark green, though, the dark green is land that the founders of ATHA vended out to a company called NextGen. Well, NextGen drilled on that land, this dark green land, and they scored, folks. NextGen is now valued at $5+ billion. And that's with just one piece of land. This is how Matt and Tim are so stinking rich right now. On that one deal, they retained 10% from staking and vending that dark green land. Then they did it again, by the way, with a company called ISO Energy, who's now worth almost $700 million. And ATHA is only valued at $130 million today. So look, I know that ATHA knows that they know what they're doing, that Matt and Tim know how to stake land and vend land and get filthy rich in the process. And here's the best part, the most important part of this story. They're beginning to drill right now on the 24th, tomorrow. The timing could not be better for this, folks. In total, they've allocated $22 million US for drilling this year. If positive drilling results start to come in, that usually means what? Major momentum in the market. So look, here's what I'll do. I'll put a link to ATHA's website in the description. Make sure to do your own due diligence. I'm just providing some of the information on the company, my thoughts on why I like them so much, and a short overview of their business plan. But they're public. All the info's available. Go look at it yourself. All right, that wraps up this episode. Like, subscribe. We'll see you next time.